Okay, so today we're going to get started with a few things. We're going to actually do some things that will allow you to start web development. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to decide on a text editor. Okay, an IDE that you're going to use. Okay. Because all the files that we're going to be using in our web development are going to be text files. Okay, so there are a couple of choices. The main choice that the one I usually use is Dreamweaver. Okay, so I'm going to do a lot of my demos using Dreamweaver CS6. Okay, now also we can also do very similar things in .NET. So as much as I can, I'm going to try and show you examples in both Dreamweaver and in .NET. Okay, and in .NET, what we'll have is access to ASP, which is another version of PHP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of technologies and tools in parallel, so that you can see the similarities and realize that so if you know PHP, ASP is not that difficult to just, it's because they're so similar and they do similar things. Okay, so I'll try as best as I can. Probably not everything. I won't have time to show everything in both environments, but you could use Visual Studio if you want, and there are free versions of it. There are even specific versions for just web development. Dreamweaver is probably available for a demo, 60-day or 30-day demo at least. And they also, so Adobe now, Adobe leases their software, so you can get access to software just by monthly, and it's like $20 or $30 a month or something like that for good software. So those are the two main IDEs. So an IDE is an integrated development environment. All right, so we'll take some notes here. Other ones that you could use for the web. So these are IDEs. Okay. So we talked about Dreamweaver and Visual Studio and what else? So there's also Eclipse that you could try. And I think you could probably even try NetBeans. Most IDEs will be able to do web. It's a question of, some of them have more tools that are specific to web development, but essentially they're all just really fancy text editors. Okay? So those are the IDEs. There's also just basic text editors. So you should probably have both, because sometimes I just want to quickly open up a text file, just look in and change something quickly, and sometimes I don't want to open up the full IDE and do that. So there are a couple of choices for simple yet pretty functional text editors. So Notepad++ is a good one. That's the one I use fairly often. There's one Sublime that I haven't used personally, but it has been recommended. There's also a shareware one. TextPad is pretty decent. It has some good tools. So certainly not just the basic Windows Notepad. You'll be pretty hopeless if you use that. Okay. So those are you need to pick an IDE. Okay. And I would try all four, right, and see what works for you, what you like. Okay. So those are the kind of the text tools, text editing tools that you'll need. Okay, the second thing that we need to do today, so once you've done that, you've installed a text editor, now we're going to need to install a server stack. Okay, so a server stack is just a stack of software that turns a computer into a web server, right? So a server, when you say a server, like server software is just application software like any other application. Like it's an application like Microsoft Office, it's an application like a game. It's just that this particular application does something specific. It listens for incoming connections on a network card, right? It just waits, and then it accepts those connections and then sends a response back. Okay, so you need to set up some software to do that. Okay, so there are at least usually four parts to a server stack. Okay, so the first part is the operating system. So that's all computers need that. You need an operating system. Okay, then on top of that, you will have your web server application that exists on top of the operating system, and then you'll have a server-side script. Okay, and then you'll also have a database. Okay, you need those at least, and probably you might have other things as well. But those four things are the basic building blocks of a server stack. Okay, so one common server stack is called WAMP, and that's an acronym. Can anyone hazard a guess what those letters would stand for in WAMP? Given what we know, right? So the first one is the operating system, then the web server, the server-side script, and then the database. Or actually, sorry, in this case it's switched around. Anyway, well, what do you think the W stands for? Sorry? Web server? No, that's the first thing is an operating system. So yeah, what's a type of operating system that starts with W? Windows. So does anyone? And then the next thing is a web server. Apache, right? That's the web server. And then what about the database? Yeah, MySQL or MySQL, and then server-side script. PHP, exactly. Okay, so there are many flavors of server stacks. You could have this, except you could do it on a Mac, right? MAMP, Mac, Apache, MySQL, or you could do it on a Linux box, LAMP, right? Linux, and then have like Apache runs on both Windows and Linux. Okay, same with MySQL and PHP. And of course, there are other web servers, and of course there are other server-side scripts and other database technologies. Okay, they all work in similar ways. So the main one we're going to focus on in this course is PHP, but we're going to talk about ASP.2 because that's part of the course outline, and I want you guys to know both. But I would estimate, and I would have to look up some statistics, but from just my experience with everyday, looking at, browsing the web, most websites are in PHP. Okay, maybe I would have to double check that. Don't hold me to that. Okay, but all the web projects I've worked on have been in PHP. That's kind of, it seems like the go-to language. A lot of the frameworks work on PHP. Although if you use ASP, it sort of has a built-in MVC framework, which we can look at too. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to download and install a server stack onto your laptop. So the one I recommend is WAMP. I assume you all have Windows machines. If you just Google WAMP, there's an application, an installer that has everything all together. So all you do is download one file, go through the install wizard, and you should be good to go. There's a couple of sometimes there may be problems if other applications are using ports, but we'll figure that out, and we'll make sure everyone has a server set up. Okay, so go ahead and do that. If we just go to, like, I already have it set up on my computer. Actually, I have two servers. I'll have to switch back. But if you just Google WAMP and go to, I guess it's this one. Yeah, this is it. And it comes with a nice little control panel that allows you to manage your server, right? So if I go to WAMP, start WAMP server, and then I'll have this little thing that helps me with a whole bunch of it brings, like, if you were to do this on Linux, there's probably scripts and things that'll do it quickly on Linux, but I've installed web servers onto Linux, and it's kind of like a whole day thing. like you would spend the whole day installing things, downloading things, doing stuff on the command line, whereas you should be able to do this in a couple of minutes. So go ahead, go to this website, download the server stack, and install it. And then let me know once you've done that, and we'll start using it. Okay? Are there two? What does it say about? Maybe is the newest? Sometimes the newest is a beta. So oh, here we go. Okay, I would get one of these here. So they're both. So one is 64 and one is 32-bit. So whichever one your operating system is, get that one. Okay. Okay, so is everyone downloading that? Yep. Okay, yeah, you might need that. Okay, try it. Download, so do you have some 64K? Okay, that's fine then. Don't worry about it. You're good. So make sure you pay attention to where it installs to, because that will your web directory will be near there in that folder. Let's see. Excellent. Okay, so how's everyone doing with that? Got it down, install? Installing? Okay. Good, good. So most of you have worked with HTML before, right? And so probably what you've done, well, that's just sort of keep the install going. Well, kind of listen with one ear and keep the install going another. So probably what you've done in the past is you've just opened up your web pages just from Windows Explorer, right? So you went to, let's say we have an index file here like this, and so we went to the HTML file in Windows, and then we opened it up in a browser like this, okay? And then we saw our web page. Now notice the browser at the beginning, it says it's file, okay? That means it's fetching that file from Windows Explorer. It's not coming from a web server. So that, for the time being, that won't make a huge difference. But once we get into server-side stuff, it will. It's a big difference. Whether the file, because you won't be able to run server-side scripts if you open it up from Explorer. So what you have to do now is once WAMP installs, so it'll probably install to maybe your C drive. Okay? So we'll go here into WAMP, and then I know for a fact that the web files are served out of the www directory. Okay? So now anything out of this folder, that is the root folder of my web server now that's running on my local machine. Okay? Oops, and Photoshop is opening. So now if I go to my browser and I type, instead of file, all this stuff, c:/demo.html, now what I can type is http://localhost/. Okay? And now I get the same file. So same file served up by a different application. The one this is served up by my web server, by Apache. The other one is served up by Windows Explorer. Okay? Apache will be able to interpret PHP code. Windows Explorer will not. Okay? So that's the big difference. So what we're going to do is, starting from today, whenever we work with web pages, we're going to serve it from our server. We're not going to open it up in Windows Explorer anymore. Okay? If that's sort of, that's a beginner's practice. We're going to start getting into the proper professional practice, okay? Because now that we're going to get into server-side technology, you need that server environment on your computer in order to develop stuff. Okay? Okay. So did everyone complete their installation? Okay? So what you should have now is on the side there should be a W there. If not, then you can just type in Windows WAMP and then start the WAMP server. And then there should be a W in your what do you call this? What do you call this area? Sorry? I don't know. There's a special area for these icons. I don't remember. But this area here. What's that? Is that what it's called? Okay. So right here, there should be a W here. Okay? So if you click on the W and then click on Start All Services, what should happen? Ideally, it should turn green. If it's off, it'll be red, and then if you say Start All Services, if everything's okay, it should turn green. If there's a problem, like I have one of the services isn't starting correctly. My web server seems to be working correctly, but there can be problems. So how many of you have a green W? Green? No? That's it. So you're good to go. You're good to go. If you have a green W, it means everything is installed. Okay. So possible problems. So I know Skype likes to use the same port. So if you have, sometimes when I have Skype running and then I try and open my web server and start it, it will fail. So there's a way in Skype. You got a green? Okay, good. Or orange? Okay, red. So click on it and then go to Start All Services. Yeah, it didn't do anything? Okay. So do you have your own computer? Here? No? Okay. Okay, so just for today it should be okay, but do you have your own computer that you can bring? Okay, bring it next week. And you have a green W? Excellent. Okay, so the way we can really check to see if this is working is open up a browser and type in localhost. And you should get a page like this. Okay, does everyone have that? Yep? Okay, good. So, now what we have to do is, let's do another test. Let's make sure we can access a file. So we're going to create a really quick HTML file, and we're going to try and access it through our server. Okay? So what we'll do is we'll go to, remember when I said make sure you pay attention where WAMP is installed to? So go into your WAMP directory, wherever that is. It may be in program files or something, but I install it to the C directory, and then there should be a folder in there called www. So click on there. I have a bunch of things here already, but you should have either very little or nothing. You index, okay? So let's create a new file. So let's go here and create a new. So we'll right click and go new text file, and let's create, we'll call it test.html. Okay, and then yes, we want to change the extension. So how many of you don't see the extensions on your files? Can everyone, there's a setting in Windows that we're going to take a look at right now that we're going to change. You should have this always on, because as a developer you need access to your extensions, because Windows assumes most users are just casual users and they don't need or want access to that, but we do. So what we have to do, I always forget how to do it. Options, where? Do I right click here? Properties, customize this folder, I think. And then general, advanced, no.
Change the extension?
Well, no, I want to turn it so that Windows shows me extensions, because I have it turned on, but you guys need to turn it on as well. I do it so infrequently, I can never remember how to do it. Explorer menu? From here? Alt? Oh, here we go. Ah, hidden. Okay, so did you see that? Press Alt, and then go to Tools and Folder Options, and then go to View, and then in the Advanced Settings, go to, so make sure Hide Extensions for Known File Types is unchecked. Okay? Okay. So now we can access our extensions, because we will need to change it between PHP and CSS and JS and all these. Okay? So what we can do now is we can open our index file in either our IDE or our text editor. Okay? So we can probably just click and drag into Dreamweaver. Okay? So now Dreamweaver has opened up my no, where did my test file go? So we're going to drag it into here. Okay, and we'll close this one. Okay, so now what we can do is we'll just type in a very, very basic HTML page, right? So we need HTML, and let's see if we can even get away without a head. And we'll just say, hello world. Okay, and now let's go back here, and so we'll say localhost test.html. That's weird. What did I do here? Let's see. Oh, I spelt it wrong. I said text instead of test. So let's go back here and change that. And now if we go back here, hopefully, there we go. Okay? So does everyone have hello world? And so now notice we're serving it off a server now. This is a real web page, right? A web page is meant to be served from a server, not from your local file manager. Okay? So everybody should have that. Let me know. Does anyone not have that? Like maybe they had a. Yeah, right. Go up. So see that one right there, the third one in the middle. Uncheck that. Yep. Now click apply. Yeah. And you got it? Okay, great. Anyone else? And you can still work today from the file manager. Like you could like basically everything from now on you can do, and then just open it like from the file manager. But starting in a couple weeks when we do server-side stuff, you'll need that. Oh, okay. What happened? Oh, well, did the localhost thing come up when you just said localhost? Because I'm not sure how these like just go back to your browser, and then just have localhost instead of get rid of everything after localhost. One more. Oh, see, there's a different server here. There's Microsoft's web servers installed here, so it's not going to work unless you have to shut that one down first. So same thing for today. From where we're going forward, you can just work from the Explorer, File Explorer, and then view your web pages in your browser. But next week, bring your laptop and install this stuff, and then if you have any problems, I can troubleshoot it. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna get through some stuff, and we're gonna try and get through some CSS and HTML stuff today, and we're gonna do some layout. Okay. So let's look at the basics of HTML. Okay. So let's go back to our first HTML page. So remember, HTML is just made up of these tags, right? And for the most part, tags need to be opened and closed, okay? And usually you cannot, I can't think of an example of when, but you cannot interleave tags. The whole, like, you can't have start a tag and then, like, you couldn't have this, like a P tag and then end the P tag between these, right? The tags have to start and stop inside each other, okay? Because what happens is, if you'll notice, our HTML document. Let's get this up here, like this. Let's do this. Can we draw here? Okay. So let's say this stuff here. If you'll notice, it forms a tree structure essentially. So from HTML, we have this sort of outer tree like this, right? HTML, and then inside this one, we would have, we have another, okay, so this one here, this is your full document, right? Let's see, where are my tools? Can I type? So this is the full document tree. Okay, and then inside, we would have like here. So let's line this back up. How can we do this? We'll put some white space here. Okay. So between why does it keep getting too big? Okay. So between HTML, right, we have a tag, and then within that we have body, okay, and then even inside that now we have a paragraph, okay. So we have this tree-like structure that forms what's called the DOM, right? That's the document object model, okay. And later on we'll look at how we can manipulate that either by HTML, or after the fact using JavaScript and jQuery. We can manipulate these elements to make our web page, our front end, dynamic. Okay? So let's go back to our HTML code here. So one thing we're missing here is we need a head tag. Okay? So remember, anything in the head tag, for the most part, doesn't appear on the web page, right? Tags that go here will not be rendered on the browser. Okay? So one thing, usually one of the first things we do in our head tag is we'll create a title, right? And remember, the title sets the text in at the top of the window, right? So we might say my first web page. Okay, and then we'll save. And why isn't this? Oh, save as, because I changed the file name. Test. Okay? So the way I like to develop anything is, as soon as I make a change, I save it and check it. See what it looks like. Because I don't want to get too far. So here we have my first web page up here. Okay? Other things that we'll put in here very shortly are, say, links to see other documents like JavaScript files and CSS files, and even we'll get into web fonts today a little bit. Okay? So let's put our text in between a paragraph tag. Okay? So remember that everything in HTML is a box. Everything is a box, right? So this body tag, that forms a box, and this paragraph tag, that forms a box too. Okay? Inside the body tag. Okay, everything is a box, and we'll look at, once we get into CSS, you'll see that, because we'll start turning on borders, and you can really see how boxes work. Okay, but let's look at a couple of more tags. So we use the paragraph tag just for sort of normal text. Okay, and so what that does is it makes it a block element. So now it'll be like having it'll have an automatic line break underneath. So if I have two paragraphs. We'll make another paragraph here. And see how Dreamweaver was smart? And I just had to, it finished my tag for me. I just had to type / and then it finished off the rest because it knows. I can say this is my second paragraph. Okay, and save. And now when I refresh, so see how there's an automatic line break. Okay? So a lot of elements are block elements. That means you normally have one of them per line. Okay, and automatically at the end of a block element, there's a new line. So that's what paragraphs are. Like if I just did this, hello world, and then second paragraph, they're going to be on the same line. See that? Because remember, HTML ignores all white space except for the first one. So it sees there's a space here, right? There's one space, but it doesn't look at new line characters. You'd have to, if I put in a line break, that would do it, but that's sort of bad practice. You shouldn't make your line breaks like that. Because I'm going to show you how, what we do is we use CSS to do that. All of your text should be enclosed within some sort of tag. Okay? So we won't do that. We'll use paragraph tags. So same thing with H1. That's text for heading. So this is my title. And then H2 is a smaller version of heading. Okay, so let's refresh that. Oops. Okay, so now you should have something that looks like this. So big text, smaller text, paragraph. Okay. So just a quick reminder about comments. So if we encapsulate text within this symbol, what's the closing one here? Is it? Yeah. Like this. So anything between this symbol and this symbol will be ignored. Okay? So it's always a good idea and I'll be the first to admit I don't always practice what I preach, but it's always a good idea to comment your code. So anytime you have a section of code that does something specific, put a comment in. Okay, so you might want to say something like this. This is where the title of the web page goes. Something like that. Okay? So comments. Don't forget about comments. What else should we look at? Okay, so very shortly we're going to get into CSS, but I think I want to show you a couple of other links for other tags. Okay, so a couple of other common tags. So we have our, it's called the anchor tag, which is, I think that's a terrible name. It should be called a link tag because it forms a link. The anchor tag uses an A, okay, and this is going to be the first tag that we look at that has something called an attribute, right? So an attribute is like a special little extra bit of information that tells you something about someone. Like, so an attribute about me, other than, like, let's say we're all humans, right? But let's say I have glasses, right? That's an attribute about me, and one other person has glasses in the course. That's an attribute, right? So we can differentiate between, like, we're all the same at a certain level, but then we can differentiate based on attributes, right? So same thing with tags. So we can have a bunch of link tags, but one thing we need to differentiate is between links is where the link goes to, right? So we use the href attribute to set the link destination. So we would say, we would put in our link. So let's say we want this link to go to Google, okay? And then between these tags, we're going to put in the address or the text that we want the link to be. So now if we go back here and refresh, now we have this, and now we click here, and now it goes to, oops, I forgot something. Yeah, I didn't put the last part here. Okay, so let's refresh, and there we go. Okay, so that's a link. Let's look at the image tag. Okay, so an image tag is going to display a picture for us, and just like the link tag or the anchor tag, it needs an attribute. And so in this case, the attribute is the file, the image file that we're going to use. So it's different than the anchor tag. Instead of using href, we use the source src attribute, and then we could give it a file name. So we'll call it image.jpg for now. Most formats. PNG, JPEG, bitmap, GIFs. Browsers are pretty good at displaying images. For the most part, it should be okay. Except for some of the, like if you have a camera that has a Sony, Sony also has proprietary formats, sometimes they won't work. But JPEG and GIF for sure, and PNG, definitely. Okay? So now, if we just look now, what will happen is we're going to have an error because we haven't. There's two parts to the link tag. There's the tag and the actual file. Okay? So now what we have to do is, this is where our HTML file is. So what we need to do is put an image in the same location as the HTML file. So what we'll do is we'll go to Google. We'll go to Google Images. And let's get a nice pretty image. That's a nice one. A lot better than what's going on outside today. Okay. Visit, view image. So now, no wait, we want to go to... Now remember, just because you found an image for free on Google doesn't necessarily mean you're free to republish that image. Okay, remember that. So what I'm doing is just for educational purposes. This isn't going to be part of an actual site. But you can't just grab people's images and then put them up on your web page, okay? You're breaking copyright. okay, where's my, so I'm going to save it to my web folder, which was in WAMP, www, and I'm just going to rename this to image. Okay, image, save. Okay, so now, if I refresh, we should have the image there. Okay, there we go. There's our image. Okay, what other things should we look at? So another type of tag is a list. So what we can do is, just like in Office when you have, or Word, where you have lists with bullet points. So what we do is we can have an unordered or an ordered list. So to have an unordered list, we use the UL tag, and then inside we give it list items. Okay, so we would close this off, and then we'd say item 1, and then we can copy and paste this. Okay, and now if we refresh, boom, we have our items. Okay. Okay. Now one more tag. The last tag. Actually, let's do one more. Or we'll come back to forms. Okay. So I'm going to introduce one more tag before we get into CSS, because really this tag and CSS go together. Without each other, they don't really do much. So what we're going to look at is something called the div tag, or the division tag. Okay, and that just looks like this: div, and then we close it off. Div. Okay. Now let's put some text between our div. Okay. Now if we go here and look. Now notice it is a block element now, so we do have a new line. But other than that, it pretty much does nothing. Right? A div tag doesn't do anything aside from create a box around our text. Okay, there is a box now around here that we can manipulate, okay, using CSS. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at CSS, and we're going to try and do a layout for a web page using CSS, div tags, and span tags. Okay? So let's introduce CSS now. So there's a couple of different ways that we can include CSS in our document, right? So remember that we're going to use CSS now to apply styles to these elements. So H1. So I could change the font size of H1. I could change the color of H1. I could change all sorts of attributes of H1. Okay, I can change with CSS. So there are 3 ways to inject CSS. So number 1, you could put CSS code directly in the element as an attribute. Okay, that's number 1. Okay, number 2, you could put the CSS code directly in the head. You can do it that way. And number 3 is you can put your CSS code in a separate file. Okay? Which of those 3? There's only one that you should ever do. Which one do you think is the good one? Why separate file? Right. Yes. Yes, for the most part, there's always exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, all of your CSS should go in at least separate files, possibly one file. Okay? Because imagine this, your web page might have, let's say, 10 pages, right? Separate pages, quote unquote, conceptual pages. So usually they're all going to look the same, more or less, right? If you have your home page, you wouldn't want one page to be blue, one page to be pink and blue and purple, right? People would think they've gone to another page. So what you do is you have one CSS file and you just link that file to all your HTML. And now let's say your font size or your font color is blue, and you're like, oh no, actually I want the font color for my entire page to be black. So now you only have to change it in one spot, in one file. You change it, and then your whole page just changes. Okay, and then also it helps. Lately I've been tutoring a developer who's working on other people's projects, and we've been tracing down some CSS problems, and it gets hard. It gets difficult when CSS isn't located in one spot. So that's another reason, because other people might look at your code, and if you put it all in the same place, people will know where to look. So that's what we're going to do. Right off the bat, we're going to include our CSS code through a link, and we'll have an external CSS page. So the first thing we have to do is go to our web folder, and we're going to create a new CSS file, and we'll call it style sheet. And then again, this is where the extensions come in handy. Stylesheet.css. Okay, and yes, we do want to change it. Oh, actually, there's already a file in there named stylesheet. So one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new folder for today. Okay, so I'm going to create, because we should get into using folders as well to organize your files. So we're going to create a new folder. We'll call it. What should we call it? What's the course code for this? Comp 229? Comp 229 demo 1. Okay. And so I'm going to take my test file, and I'm going to take my style sheet file, I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to paste it into here. Paste. Okay, and then I'm going to rename this, not style name 2. I'm going to rename it just style sheet, and then index I'm going to rename, or test I'm going to rename index. Okay, so now if I go to here, comp 229 demo 1. Okay, now my web page comes up automatically. Because remember, index.html, that's the default web page that's loaded. Okay, that's your first page on your web page is going to be oh, and see, look, something broke. Why did my image break? Because I didn't move it into the folder, right? So let's do that. So we'll go back here. Where was it? Where is it? I don't see it. Oh, right here. Okay, and then so I'll cut that, and I will. What did I? Here, and we'll paste it in here. And then one thing we'll do is also we'll put our CSS into a separate folder called CSS, and so we'll move this up here. Okay, and now what we'll do is we'll drag this into Dreamweaver, and we'll open it up. Okay, and we'll close this, and we'll also drag this over. Whoops. Okay. So now we have our two files. So what we have to do now is we have to create a link in our index file. So we'll do that. We'll use the link tag, and so we'll tell it it's going to be a style sheet, and the type is going to be text.css, and the href is going to be CSS style sheet.css. Okay, and I'm not 100. We may need a slash there, but let's check. So now what we'll do is we'll test to see if the link is working properly. So we'll go into our style sheet file, and the first thing we're going to do is we'll change the style of, let's say, the heading. Okay, so the way CSS works is the first part of it, the first part of a CSS command, it's kind of like a command, is you select an element, and we'll look at the different ways of doing that. But the most common way is to just select all of the elements of a certain type. So the way we do that is we just type the element name. So we'll say H1. So now we're saying I want to style all H1 elements. So now under H1 we're going to create two curly brackets, open and closing. Okay? And now beside these brackets we're going to create attribute value pairs for whatever it is we want to change. So let's say we want to change the color. So let's change it to, and then Dreamweaver has, these are these little tools that I was talking about that help you. So if you use Notepad++, they don't have this. So for example, we could click here and then pick a color. Because I can't remember hex values for colors. No one. You shouldn't try. So let's save it and let's go back and let's see if the link has worked. Okay. So now my title is blue and now it's worked. So now we know that everything, because sometimes we have, right, you always want to test. Especially when you create new files and things, there can always be problems. So what would be let's say we did that and it didn't work. What would be some of the problems that we could have had? Like, why wouldn't it have worked? What are some of the problems?
Style sheet folder is not in that folder.
Yeah, maybe maybe that we named the folder wrong, or it's in the wrong folder, or it doesn't exist, or we named the file wrong, or right. So maybe the file, is named style sheet, but we put style sheet. I think it's case sensitive. Let's try it with a capital S. I don't think it's going to work. I guess it did work. So it's not case sensitive, but a lot of things are, and so it could, things like that. Maybe if we had style sheet 1 or something, it would that definitely wouldn't work. Okay. Why is it still being colored? Oh, there we go. Right. So now it's broken. So those are, you have to think like a troubleshooter, right? You think, okay, this doesn't work. So a lot of students I see, they just sort of, because they don't realize the answer right away, they sort of get frustrated and give up. But just think of, try and think of, okay, why isn't this working? It could be the link, it could be the file name, it could be the folder, it could be maybe my style sheet code is wrong, my CSS code. Okay? So, but it's working now. We've tested it and everything's working. Okay? So now let's do some things with CSS. Okay? So for example, we could let's style the body tag. So we can do that. We can go body, and usually, to the best of my ability, I kind of like to include the CSS code kind of in the order it appears on the HTML. But I know that's not always reasonable to do that. So let's set the background color, for example. Okay, and again, we can use a color picker here. Let's have this ugly fluorescent green. Okay, so obviously today is not a lesson in graphic design. Please don't take. I'm just doing things willy-nilly here. Okay, so maybe we'll focus on that another time. For now, we're just working on the techniques. Okay, so we've styled the body. Okay, what about the paragraph? Let's style that. How might we do that? Let's go back here. So now if we can style all paragraphs, okay, and let's make the color, let's make it red, and let's make the size, is it font size or size? Font size. Let's make it 9 pixels, really small. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, see? Now, what if we want one paragraph to be styled one way, but another paragraph to be styled another way? So what we've done here is sorry? Right. But so what you have to do is either give it an ID or a class name. Okay, and then in CSS refer to that ID or class name. Okay? So there are 3 main ways in CSS we can select. So we can select on, and there are other more advanced ways we won't touch on today, but you can select all elements by just listing the element, or you can select an ID by using the number sign, like that, and then giving the ID, or we can select a class and use the dot. Okay, and I'll show you what we mean. So let's say we go over here, and let's say I want this paragraph. So let's say this paragraph, the ID, so we're going to give it an attribute called ID, and we're going to say this paragraph is called the question. Okay? And this paragraph is the answer. Okay? So what we can do now is we'll go back to our CSS code. Or we were there already. Here. And now what we'll do is we'll reference the ID by using $, and let's change the answer. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to override. So we're going to set all the paragraphs to be a certain color, and then we're going to override just some of them to be another color. So remember, in CSS, the last thing that occurs takes precedence. So if you set it to be one color, and then later on in your CSS file make it another color, it's the last one that takes precedence. So let's do this. Let's change the color to black again. We'll change that to black. Okay. So see now how that one is black. Okay. So now usually we use ID when we only have one of those things. Okay. But so let's say we have a like a forum or something, and we might have a bunch of questions and answers, right? Like let's if you go to Yahoo Answers or whatever, Yahoo Answers, they they have stuff like that. Like the question is in a different font than the. Let's just see. Okay, so here's a question. Right. So see, this is the question. It's in a different style, and then this is the title, and then this is the question, and then there's no answers here, but it would be in a different style. So what we want to do is, instead of, it's better form to then give it a class. So let's say we would change this to class, and then also if we did another, let's say, oops, so let's copy this, and so we'll have another paragraph also of class answer, and this will be third paragraph. Okay, now they'll both be black if we style them, right? Or no, wait, what happened here? Oh, so I need to go back to the style. Instead of the $, I have to use the dot, because I'm referring to a class, not an ID. Okay, so let's go back here, and now it's black again. Okay? Okay. So let's keep moving along. So everyone's still with me, right? No one is lost or confused or just... Okay? So we're moving pretty quickly, but I'm assuming that you've sort of had some experience with this stuff already. Okay? Okay. So we looked at sort of the 3 ways to select, and we looked at a couple of... we changed a couple of the properties in our web page. Okay. Yeah. Well, usually you would want to use the ID if you're referring to one element. So one instance. Usually that's the best. And then class, so like a class of people, right? So people with black hair, right? That would be a whole bunch of people have black hair. Whereas an ID would be like the President of the United States. There's only one ID. There's only one president, right? So that's how you should use them. ID when you're referring to one instance, class when many, right? Okay. So what else should we look at here? So what we're going to do now is we're going to start using we're going to start looking at how we use div tags to create layout. So let me just have to download a file over here. Okay, so we looked at, we started looking at the div tag. Okay, so if we look back to a few minutes ago, right, we put a div tag around this text. Okay, and then we looked at our web page and we noticed that, oh, nothing much is really going on. Okay, But so what we're going to do is we're going to start manipulating the div tags, and so that we can create a layout. Okay? So remember that. Let's have a look at what a reminder of what the box model is. Okay? So remember a moment ago I said everything, all HTML tags are a box. Everything is a box. So this is pretty much the outline. This is like the general form of all elements. Okay? So this is paragraphs, headings, div tags, links, everything all have this box structure. Okay? So the first thing is they have in the middle, this is sort of the meat of the sandwich, is the border. That's the border here. Okay? And we can set we can set the thickness, we can set the style, like solid or dashed, we can set the color, and so that's the border. Then on the outside of the border is what's called the margin. So that represents the space between the border, the edge of the border, and the edge of the margin of the next element. Okay? Then inside the padding, inside the border, we have padding. And that is the space between the border and the content. So you can create your, so a lot of times you don't want your content to be, let's say you have a little box that it's like an area that holds some text. Well, you wouldn't want your text to be right up against the div tag, right? You want some space. So that you do that using padding. Okay? And then of course inside you have your content. So what we can do is we can create layouts by manipulating this box model using CSS, HTML and CSS. Okay? And that's what we're going to do. So let's do this. Let's do let's go back to our HTML. So above here, let's create some, we're going to create a layout, a basic layout for a web page. Okay? So let's keep this div tag. This is going to be our sort of outermost div tag. Okay? And actually the way we do it in HTML is a little bit different now, but I kind of just want to show you the old way first because it makes a little bit more sense for beginners, and then I'll show you the new tags that we use. Okay? So the first thing is we're going to give this div tag, we're going to give it an ID. Okay? And we're going to call this div tag container. Okay? That's what we're going to call it, container. And then the inside div container, we're going to create another div, we're going to create an ID, and we're going to call it header. Okay, and we're going to close off our div tag. Okay? And we're also going to tab our code very nicely. See how whenever I put an element inside an element, I tab in. Okay? It really creates very readable code. If you're showing me like getting me to help you with your code because there's an error and I see everything's all against the edge, first thing I'm going to say to you, tab your code. Okay? Because you'll notice errors that way. Okay, so now underneath div header, we're going to create another div. We'll call this content area. Okay, and then we'll close that one off. And then underneath this one, we'll create another div, and we'll close that off. And we'll give this one an ID. We'll call this footer. Okay, now let's go here. Let's go and look. So what will appear on the web page? Nothing. Nothing, right? Because there's a whole bunch of div tags squeezed in there. But because we haven't given them any structure with CSS, nothing shows yet. Okay? So what we're going to do now is so for example, let's in the content area, let's put a paragraph inside here. So let's put a p tag. So again, we're going to tab and we'll put a p tag. And then let's go, we're going to go to the web and get some text called lorem ipsum. Have you heard of lorem ipsum before? So lorem ipsum is just a bunch of gobbledygook that looks kind of like English. So when you're doing layout, see all this? It kind of looks like Latin, but it's nonsense. But it looks like English. So what we do is we use lorem ipsum as a placeholder while we're doing design and layout because maybe we don't have the content yet. So if we Google lorem ipsum and then we'll just copy. So see what I did? I went to Lorem Ipsum website and then just clicked here, generate, and then I just copied from here. So we'll copy this text and go back here, and then in between the paragraph tags we'll paste Lorem Ipsum. Okay? And now if we go here back to our web page and refresh, we'll see Lorem Ipsum. But see, it still seems like nothing. Even though we've surrounded it with a bunch of div tags, it still looks like nothing. But we will fix that in a minute. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into CSS. We're going to go to our CSS file, and we're going to start applying style to our div tags. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to apply style to the div with the ID container. Remember we gave it the ID container? So now we'll look here, and we'll go here, and inside container we're going to give it a few properties. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on the border. This is one of the first things I like to do when I'm doing layout, because it lets me see the div tags and lets me see what's going on. So the first thing, the border width, we're going to make 2 pixels, and the border style we're going to make solid, and the border color we're going to make what color do you guys like? Pink. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, so see, now we have a border. So this outside box here, right? This outside box, now we've given it a border. We've turned it on. So now we can actually see. We can see what's going on. Okay, and see how the box goes from end to end. Okay? So now what we're going to do is let's give it a, so we can give it a height and a width. So actually we'll give it a minimum height. So we'll say minimum height equals 500 pixels. Okay? So now see how the box is always, it's 500 pixels no matter what. Okay? And then we can set the width to be, let's use an absolute value, so we'll say 864 pixels. So that'll make the width exactly 864 pixels long. Now notice, if I shrink my browser, it's always 864 pixels no matter what. So see how now the box continues on, it's hidden by my browser window now, right? So now what we can do is, instead of using an absolute value of pixels, we can use a percentage. So let's make it 75%. And so what that means is the width, it'll be 75% of the value of the parent element. So what is the parent element of container? Body, exactly. So now if we go back here, now see the box is 75%, but watch. See? The box stays 75% of the page, even though the absolute size has changed. Okay, that's an important difference to note. Okay, because you know, we live in an environment now where there are so many different view sizes. Right, there are phones and tablets and laptops and widescreens and projectors and HDTVs, and so you need to make sure your web page is responsive, right? So depending on the size of your web page, you shouldn't have to scroll to the side. That's usually poor design. If you have to scroll to the side, something's wrong with your design. Okay? But for the meantime, okay, let's keep going with our layout. Okay? So now let's style the header here. Okay? Let's do that. Let's go to our style sheet. And now we're going to do this same thing that we did to the header, but we're going to do to the to the container. We're going to do to the header. So again, we're going to select the header, and we're going to give it a few properties. So we're going to say, we'll give it a height, and this one will make it 200 pixels. Okay, and then we'll also give it a background color. Let's make it 0099F. Okay, that's a blue color. Okay, and now we'll turn on the border. So the border, and we're only going to turn on the bottom because we just want a separating line. So we can remember most things with the box model. We can either manipulate the entire thing, so the border all the way around, or we can just do border left, border bottom, etc. Okay, so let's do border bottom width, and we'll set that to be 2 pixels, or not 20 pixels, 2 pixels, and then border bottom style. Let's make it solid as well. And border bottom color. Let's make that black. Okay. So let's see what that looks like now. Okay. So see what we've done now? So now we've given shape and form to this tag. Okay? And so now if we put in a paragraph in here, or let's put a heading. This is my header. See, it's in here now. Okay? And there's a quick fix for this, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay? So does everyone have pretty much up to this so far? Just give you 1 second here. Okay, so the way to fix this little space, I believe, let's try. We can go to Style Sheet, and the container will set to be Display Block, and then Margin Auto. Let's try that. Oh, no, that's centered it. What do we want to do here? Okay, no, that was to center it. What we want to do now is we're going to make all div tags. We're going to change the display to inline block, and then the width is going to be 100%. Okay. And there, that fixed that little space. So that was. Sometimes in web technology, things don't work exactly how they're supposed to according to spec. Just because, we have a bunch of browsers and they all don't quite work the same. So sometimes you have to do little hacky things like that to fix things that shouldn't happen. Okay, so that's just the way it is. Okay, so let's keep working. So let's finish off our layout here. So let's what were we working on? So the next thing we're going to do is style our footer. Okay, so let's go back to our page, and okay, first of all, let's change the color of our header so it's not as crazy. Make it black. And so now we'll change, so we've got container, header, and now our footer. Okay, so now we'll make our footer, we'll give it a height of 120 pixels. Okay, and we'll make a background color. We'll give it that same blue, 000099FF, and then we'll give the border top. We'll make that width 2 pixels as well, and the border top style solid, and the border top color. Okay, let's have a look. Okay. Oh, so we missed one thing. We didn't style the content area. So what we'll do is we'll give that a min height. Content. Do we call it content area or content? Content area. Okay. And that, so we'll say min height 400 pixels and background color. Okay. And there we go. Okay. So there we have the beginnings of our layout. So now we have, see, our text is close to the edge here. So what would I do? Let's say I want to create some space between this text and the inside of this box. What would I do? How would I do that?
Margins.
Margin? For what?
Margins from the box.
Which one?
Content.
Content area? Well, so you could do it 2 ways. I think one way is a little bit better. You could change the padding of the paragraphs, or no, the margins of the paragraphs, or the padding of the content area. I think we should do the padding of the content area. That'll be a little more uniform. So let's go content area, and we'll say padding 10 pixels, let's say. Let's start with 10. Oh, the reason, so because what I have to do now is because I set the width here 500 pixels, I'll have to, why is that coming out? 70 width 75%. Well, that's the container. Well, if we set it, no, I know, but I'm just trying to, let's see if we can make this 100%. Let's see if that works, because that shouldn't be popping out there like that. Well, if we do this, no, it's still okay. Let's do a quick fix for now. So I think if we change the width, we'll make this 800 pixels, and then we'll make this width, it would be 780. Let's try that. Okay. So see what I did there? So I just I'll get back to you on how to do that properly. I think it has to do with the overflow. But so what I did is I hard-coded the width of the container, and then I hard-coded the width of the inside content area, but then subtracted 20 pixels, 10 on each side. Okay? I wonder, let's try it the other way. Let's do it this way. So I'm going to undo all that. Change this back to, okay, let's save. And now, okay, let's, instead of changing the padding of the content area, let's change the margin of the paragraph. Let's make that 10 pixels and see if that, maybe that's a little nicer to us. Okay, actually that seemed to work better for us. Then I don't have to cheat the other way. So let's do it, let's make it 20. Okay, And now let's change the color to something not ridiculous. Let's make it black, I guess. And also the font size is way too small. Okay, there we go. Same thing, now our header looks a little funny now too, right? So let's do H1, and so again we'll make a margin of 20 pixels. And now it looks a little better, okay? What else can we do? Well, let's do, I think we have time. Let's sorry?
For the motion, marquee.
Oh, marquee? Generally I'd avoid those. You mean where it's moving? No, I'd stay away from that. Moving and flashing, no. It's a lot of times just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. It's not. I wouldn't. It's not good. Okay. So let's move all this stuff into our box here. So let's go back to our index. So into our content area we'll put all this stuff. And I wonder how we might have to do something with our image. So now we'll put it in our content area. And now we have it here. Okay, so it overflowed. But what we can do now is so we'll go to our style sheet and we will we'll go to our index and we'll give the image an ID. We'll call it sunset. And we'll go over here and we'll say sunset width, and I believe if we say 50%, it should be half the size of our container now. No, what is it? It's 50% of.
50%.
Oh, I put 50 pixels? Oh, sorry. Okay, my bad. There we go. See how it's half? And so as I shrink down, okay. So that's the advantage. You can do that here in your index. You could say width. Don't do that. Do all your style in your style sheet. Don't put any style in HTML with your HTML stuff. Okay. So I think we have time. Let's do a navigation bar quickly. And then I'll let you guys kind of work on this week's take-home lab assignment. Or lab assignment. You can work on it here too. Okay.
If you want to create some link buttons on this page, is giving the identical numbers of 1 and 2. If you want to move to the second page, we can do that.
What do you mean?
If you want to go to the next page.
The next page?
Yeah. Shall we put some buttons on this page? Like one.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do right now. Yep, we're gonna make a little navigation bar. Yep, just give me a second to call up my notes here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a navigation bar. Okay. So obviously we would want our navigation bar. Well, not obviously, but we'll put it in the header. But you could have sidebars, or you could have, sometimes I've seen navigation bars on the bottom, but for now we'll just stick it in the top. So what we'll do, so we have to go to our div, our header area here. So let's change this to something else, like Carmen's webpage. Okay, and then so underneath we're going to use an unordered list to create our navigation. Okay, so we just learned today that we can do an unordered list like so. Okay, and then inside we're going to have a couple of list items. Okay, and I think we'll have let's start off with 4. Okay, or 5. And so what we'll do is we'll give the entire list, we'll give it an ID. We'll call it top nav. Okay, and inside our list items, what we're going to do is have our links. Okay, so we'll have our href, and we'll just reference. So this will be the main page. This will be the current page that we're writing right now, and we'll just call this home. Okay, and then we have to close the link.
Can you reference to the page as the social websites like Facebook?
Oh, you could link to anything. You could link to anything. But for now, we'll just do an internal navigation bar, and then links. You can put any URL. Any URL you can put in the links. So let's have a look now what that looks like. Okay. So there we have home. So if we click there, we go. So we're going to restyle this so it looks a lot nicer. Not kind of like this looks sort of early 1990s. Okay. So we'll make it look a little bit better. So first, let's add in a few more links. So we'll add in here. We'll just add in our links, and then we'll put in page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. Okay, and then we'll change the titles to page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. Okay, so now let's take a look. So now if we go here, we're going to have a bunch of links, and if I click here, it's going to say not found because we haven't actually created those pages yet. Okay, but we have our basic structure now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use CSS to restyle this code, this navbar. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to CSS, and we'll change our top nav. Okay. We're going to change it first. We're going to change the display to inline block. Okay. Then we're going to have a 0 margin, and our padding is going to also be 0. And we're going to change the list style type to none. So the dots are going to go away. So let's go back. Let's refresh, and that's what we've done. Okay? So there was a lot of elements come with default settings, so we've just overridden the margin, the padding, and the style. So there's no more dots anymore. Okay, so let's keep going. So let's change the background color. And let's make it this color. Okay, it's sort of a gray color. You can do whatever color you want. And now what we want to do is we want to change. We want to change the style of these LI elements. So what we can do is we can say, we're getting into the advanced CSS selection now. So what we can say is we can say, I want to access top nav, but within top nav I only want to change LI elements. So only LI elements within top nav will be changed now. So now I'm going to add in my style. So I'm going to say float left, okay, and I'm going to make the height 32 pixels, and I'm going to make the min width 80 pixels, and I'm going to make the text align center, and I'm going to make the border just on the right, so we're going to create a like a break between each one. So we're going to set it to be 1 pixel solid, and we'll set this to be the color. So remember before I was doing border width style color? You can do that all in one line, right? This is the border width style color. You can either or. Okay? So now let's take a look. Aha. Okay? So see how we floated the elements? So before they were block elements, so there was a new line. But now we floated it and put it to the left. So everything floats on that same line. Okay? And now it's starting to look a little bit more like an actual nav bar. Okay? So now what we want to do is we will change our, we want to get rid of the links. It doesn't look, that's sort of old-fashioned as well. We want to change the color. So now we're going to change everything within top nav and everything within LI, but only link tags within LI. Okay? So now we're going to say, so we'll change the display to be block. We'll change the height to be 26 pixels, and now we're going to change the padding. And again, you can change the padding all in one line. So we'll change the, we'll make it 6 pixels, 8 pixels, 0 pixels, and 8 pixels. Okay? And let's change the background color to be something else. 6, 6, 6. Okay? And text decoration. This is where we turn off the underline. We'll make it none. And then color, we'll make it this. Okay, let's see what we have now. Okay, there we go. Okay. So now we have the start of a nav bar. Okay. Now, so if we go to these pages, it's going to be broken. So what can we do? So basically, each page will be more or less the same, except for the stuff inside the content area, right? So what we can do now is we'll go over here, go to our folder, our directory, and we will copy this file and paste it a couple of times. Okay? And now we'll just rename it. Oops. Okay, so now let's put these in Dreamweaver. There we go. So now we can just change, so the title, we'll change the title. So we'll say page 1, and then also in the header we'll say page 1. Okay? And now let's change the content. So we'll get rid of all this just so we can tell the difference. Okay. There we go. Back to home, back to page. Okay. So, pretty straightforward, right? So you see how we manipulated the div tags and the other elements like the H tag, the P tag, the A tag, all these tags to create this layout of a web page. Okay? So we just went through some basic stuff today. Let me see if I've left out maybe one or two things here. Okay, another thing, an easy way to create a hover effect. So when we hover over the mouse over our link, we want it to change, right? So let's do this. Let's so we'll go back. We could try a couple things. Let's go to our CSS. So let's do for so hover. Let's do hover. Let's try it for the A. So we'll say A, and then we use colon, and we say hover. Okay, and then we give it. So this is A only when you're hovering over it. So let's say color blue. Let's try that. Oops. Save it. Maybe must be, what am I missing here? Oh, it should work. Let me try another feature. Let me try background color. Let's make it yellow. Maybe. How would it be working? Okay, let's try it with LI. That's strange. I'm not sure why that's not working. LI. Oh no, wait. That's stupid. It should be like this. Still no. Okay, I'm gonna figure this out while you guys are working on your lab. One more thing I just wanted to show you. So the square box look is kind of old-fashioned now as well. And what we can do, it used to be fairly difficult to make rounded borders. So what we can do now is in CSS we can actually round the border by using border radius. And so let's make this 20 pixels and see what happens. Okay, so actually we'd have to do the internal ones as well. So we'd have to say header, and let's see, that might look a little funny on the bottom. Okay, that looks okay actually. And then let's do it for content area and footer. Okay, and now let's do this. Let's do what would we do? I want to make some space on the bottom. So let's do padding bottom 20 pixels. No, not padding, margin. Come on, you guys are supposed to correct me on this stuff. There we go. Okay, and now let's do it for the bottom of content. There you go. Okay, that's a pretty nifty layout. And probably what I would do is I would also then I would turn off the border for the container. Maybe so we could get rid of this and get rid of this. Okay, And there you have it. It's a fairly modern looking layout that we did in 2 hours, right, with me going pretty slow. Okay? Okay. So, here's your, I'm going to give you a fairly high level task to do for next week. Okay? And so you can submit it. It's I'll be here for until 1:30 or 1:20 to help you if you have problems. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to create a web page for yourself, but so everyone's familiar with, say, trading cards for like athletes and stuff, right? So like like this kind of stuff, like this on the base on this side, right? So I want you to create one of these, a web version of you. Okay? So it should have nice, see how let's make this bigger. See how, there's a nice image with a rounded border, and then there's a border around it and a nice background, and then it doesn't have to be exactly like this. You can make your own style. And so it should have your name on it. It should have, maybe a position or something. Have some fun with it, right? But essentially, you should have a website that has a basic layout like this. So at the bare minimum, it should have your picture, and it should have your name and some sort of position or job or something. And it should be proportioned like this, right? So it should be in the shape. So it can be sort of any size, but it should be, it's basically maybe a 3:2 ratio, right? It's 2 long, 3 high kind of thing, right? And so make it like a card, okay? And that's your lab assignment for this week. So if you do that, you'll get 1 out of 1 for the lab assignment, okay? If you only do like half of it or kind of sort of, maybe there's some errors, I may give you half or nothing, right? So it's kind of, the labs are sort of an all or nothing thing, okay? So start it up in the lab, and if you have any problems, I'll be here to help you. And if you have any problems working on that throughout the week, you can email me and stuff, and I can try and help you. But so what I want you to do is I'll create a Dropbox. So we'll call this Lab 1. What would you call these things? Trading cards? Trading card? Something like that. You guys will know what I mean. And so it'll be out of 1. And there's no grade item right now. I'll fix that in a bit. And we'll submit. So you'll probably have, you're going to have a number of files, right? You're going to have an image, at least one image. You're going to have a CSS file and an HTML file. Okay? And it's good practice to put your images and your CSS file in separate directories. So have one directory called images, one directory called CSS. Okay? And then put your files in there. And then, so zip all that up, or rar it into one, and then submit that to the Dropbox. Okay? And I'll take a look at it next week. So that's due before the end of class next week. So actually or before the beginning of class. So it's due at, so it's starting now, and the end date will be, what's today? The 25th, so it'll be, February already. And it will be due at 9/29. Okay? Okay. So any questions about that? Any questions about the stuff that we looked at today? Maybe we'll go in, we'll do some, I'll go through some more specifics of CSS next week just so that you're on top of it, and then we're going to start probably JavaScript next week, and maybe jQuery, depending on how quickly we get through some stuff. Okay? Sure. So I'll tell you, I'll post what we did today. And so I've also been recording my screen and recording everything today. So let me oh shoot. Okay. Actually, okay, excellent. So I'm going to stop the video now.